If you can prove adultery in a case, it can impact property division. Usually not much, and certainly not as much as the wronged spouse would hope. Because property division in Alabama is equitable, which means fair, typically the judges start from a place of things should be divided equally. And then if there are certain factors that might knock one spouse one way or another, they're going to consider that. Adultery can be one of those factors, but you may, instead of seeing a 50-50 division, see a 55-45 division. Now, that doesn't feel like a whole lot of a punishment if you are the one who's been cheated on. But the theory is that what somebody has built up during the entire course of their marriage shouldn't necessarily be taken away because they've done some bad acts. So it's very case specific. It's a whole lot different if you're showing a one-time act versus repeated acts or a relationship that's happened over the course of many years. Just like everything else, there is a severity that's going to be considered, but it matters enough that if you think we can prove adultery, I'm going to want to try to prove it for your benefit. Adultery can have a big impact on alimony decisions. If you are the person who has cheated and you would normally get alimony, you may get a lot less alimony if you have repeatedly cheated. Conversely, if you are the person who would be paying alimony and you've had an affair, you may have to pay a little bit more as kind of a financial punishment for doing so. It's going to be looked at as a scale. The judges don't ever want to leave anybody destitute or on the street because of the act of adultery, but it can be very, very important in looking at amount and duration of alimony. If it's been a long-term relationship and that person has provided any sort of financial support to the spouse who has been cheating, that can also come into play because it may be sort of an assumption that that person is going to be there in the future as part of the financial support. If adultery is an issue in your case, it's really not supposed to affect a determination of custody. The law says that it shouldn't. On a practical level, depending on how bad the conduct has been, it could impact the impression of a person's character such that it could affect the award of custody. The absolute biggest mistake is if a person has an affair and then brings their children around their paramour. That can super affect custody, and you don't ever want to do that if you're thinking about it. If it's a person who maybe has any type of criminal background, or maybe that person is still married, that is still even worse. In those situations, custody can definitely be affected. We've had cases where, a boyfriend was brought around children and the children started calling him daddy before the mother was divorced from the father. I believe that impacted the custody in that case. Anything that affects the children can be a factor, but if it has been kept completely separate, then it really shouldn't affect your custody case. If you can prove adultery, you can ask for a fault divorce, which means that the grounds for the divorce are adultery. However, that is almost never done. Almost every divorce, even if adultery is proven, the people are divorced on no fault grounds, which means irreconcilable differences. It's just not normally put in an order. There's the judge can make orders that consider the particular act of adultery without making that a grounds. So you shouldn't be expecting that to appear in your judgment of divorce, even if you're able to prove it. If adultery is an issue in your divorce, come see us at Empowered Family Law.